So we were introduced through a mutual friend, and at that point, I lived in Edinburgh because I was at university there, and he lived in Kidderminster because he worked there.
Uh-huh.
And it was just a very, back in the days when Facebook chat was a bit new, and it was just a hey, how are you? And it just evolved from there. And
Right.
we ended up having our first date in Bristol randomly. Because I was going down to Wales with some of my flatmates, her brother lived there. We randomly met in Bristol, and I remember him saying he thought I would have been taller than I was.
Mhm.
I'm not even that short. I'm average height, and we went back and forth like that for a long time. We lived apart for a good year and a half, and then he moved to Yorkshire, and then I followed him there after I graduated, and we got engaged, got married very young. I was 24, he was 25, and the rest was history. We had
Wow.
2 children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it? What was it that drew you to him at the start?
Oh goodness, that's a good question. Desperation. No, that's awful. Um, I don't know. He just was nice.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, he was from Northern Ireland too, which was at that point in my life, I was like, oh, I want to meet somebody from there. So that was a draw, I suppose. And he's a bit of a farmer man, or a wannabe farmer.
Hmm.
And we just clicked. Do you know that we used to back when it was MSN Messenger that we did a lot of communicating via that, and we could talk and just type for like 8, 9 hours at a time, and the
Wow.
conversation never ran dry. And we just clicked, I think, and we were just meant to find each other.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
lovely, isn't it? I know certainly from Fiona and I's story that it was exactly the same. Like no, it was very, very rarely any of our silence in our conversations.
Oh, there was never silence in ours,
Yeah.
ever. Yeah. So
And I
no, it
guess
was yeah, we were a match. I don't know if we were a match made in heaven, but my I probably was a bit fiery and he was a bit calmer. So
mm,
he brought me down. Um, like over the years that we were married, he definitely mellowed me out,
okay.
and it helped me a lot. And he was so kind, and yeah, he was a very, very gracious man to put up with me.
Do you think he would say the
Yeah.
same about himself if you were to
He
ask him?
probably, he's such a humble man, he probably would.
Yeah.
Um, he absolutely would. He would always say, "Oh, you're too good for me," which was not the case at all. It was the other way around. But I think and then whenever we had a family, we were a team. It wasn't me doing everything or him doing everything. We were very much together in it all, and I was very grateful for that. He would wash the dishes at night, and he would strip the beds at the weekend and get it on, even though he was exhausted from working all week. So just just a team from the
Yeah.
start. We were a team, really. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we had
Uh,
lots of fun. Whenever it was just us, particularly, we both loved going to historical places. So we tried to get sort of a little city break every so often and leave the kids with grandparents. And I'm so grateful for that time we had now. Because we went to Rome, we went to Dubrovnik, we went to Germany a couple of times, and those were some of our best times together. In Sicily, we got to Sicily, and whenever he was kind of given that worst diagnosis, I was like, I'm booking this, we're going. And that was our last holiday together, and it was the best. We just could have spent 24 hours a day together, and yeah, it was a good one. It was a great one. Yeah.
wow. Yeah. Italy's, we were in Italy as well, Fiona and I. And that was our last holiday, believe it or not, too, was Sorrento
Oh, lovely.
and the Amalfi Coast.
Lovely.
And it was just like literally someone had painted it.
I know it's beautiful. And we had planned to do an Italian road trip. That would have been for last summer, but unfortunately things just didn't go that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And was it during that trip or before that trip you found there was difficulties or symptoms of
Uh,
any description?
I think it was March 2021. He had come out of the shower, and I don't know why I'd went into the bathroom, and I just spotted on his back, just on his shoulder, just here. There was a funny looking mole, and he had quite a lot of moles. He had that skin type where there was quite a few, but I just knew instantly when I looked at it, I was like, that does not look right. I know from working in breast cancer that when things are nasty, they've got jaggy edges, they're angry looking, and this looked angry. It had different colors in it. It definitely had a jaggy border. It was red around it, and instantly I was like, "Oh no, we need to see about that straight away." And but it was that time because it was 2021. We were still in that post-COVID difficulty with GPs. They weren't seeing people. It was difficult to just get an appointment. And he eventually managed to get one, and we had ended up going off to the coast that day with the children. And somehow he missed the phone call from the doctor. And so we had a whole handling trying to get another call. I mean, his phone never rang. I don't know what happened. Um, but after getting through a difficult receptionist, managed to get another one, and he did the thing where you send the picture to the doctor, and straight away he was like, "Right, I need you to come down and see me." And he sent him off that same day to the skin clinic. Um, in a there's like a village hospital. No, it's not a village, a town, like one of the smaller hospitals, and part of York Hospital. So he went to Selby, and they cut it out straight away. And that, to me, that definitely rang alarm bells that I thought this is not going to be something very good. And I think it was about 6 weeks later we got the call in to say that it was stage 1B melanoma. And at that point they referred him from York to Leeds because Leeds is like a melanoma centre. It's where people in the region would go to for anything melanoma related. And they offered him what's called a sentinel lymph node biopsy. So where they biopsy the main lymph node, and because his was here, it was under his arm. So he didn't have that though till the September. So bear in mind, we'd found this in March, but all the way to September, they offered him that. And the chances at that point, because it was such a low stage of it having spread, it was low, it was very low. So then when we eventually got the call, I think it was October, to say that it had spread to his lymph nodes under his arm. And again, working in the job that I worked in, I knew straight away that that took him up to a higher stage. So he became stage 3. I think he was 3A. He was bordering 3A and 3B because they kept saying there was some sort of weird patchiness on these lymph nodes that had come out. The pattern was different. Um, and that even at that point, I feel like our world kind of shattered a lot. Because I just having the work experience that I do, I was very scared, and I am bad for getting Dr. Google out, but I pulled up all the research, the relevant research, and the chances of it coming back at that point were pretty high. I can't remember now what it was, but they offered him. He had a year of adjuvant immunotherapy, so that was pembrolizumab, I think it was called. So he went once a month for that, and that was to kind of stem off anything, mop up any cells that might have been floating around. And that finished in October 2022. And that was our 10th wedding anniversary, and we celebrated by going off to Dubrovnik on a 5-star holiday, and it was absolutely fabulous. And we were then he was having 3 monthly CT scans, so head, neck, chest, abdo, pelvis. And that went on for 3 months. He had 3 monthly skin checks, and we got all the way to June 2024. And I think we'd probably become a little bit not blasé about it, but the more time goes on, the more your level of worry it goes down. And so I wasn't even thinking that something bad would come out of this. And we went to the Cotswolds for a week, had a lovely week. Went back to work on the Monday. I was in work for an hour, got a phone call from him that said that they'd found 3 small brain tumors in the scan. And at that point, that was when everything fell apart. Because I knew what that meant. He was stage 4, this was incurable. And it was probably the worst day of my life, to be honest. So I came home, did lots of talking. I, of course, went back to the research, and it didn't look good at that point. We were looking at, 2, 3 months. But, we met with the consultants. They said, we're going to give you this gamma knife treatment. So that's like a really direct gamma ray into the head. where they had to screw. So he had two screws here and two in the back of his head, and they screw on this frame, and they literally blast these gamma rays at your head. And actually, that was successful. But in the meantime, so you have to wait to see, and then have more MRIs done. And in the meantime, those three had shrunk, but a few more had popped up. So we went then at that point, I'm going to just get my timeline right here. So we were into September at that point, and he had started feeling quite sick. And to me, I thought it was kind of like a gastritis type thing. So we went to the GP, they put him on, like a stomach tablet to try and ease that. Went and had an appointment with the consultant, which was more delayed than it should have been, unfortunately. And this rang warning bells in her head straight away. She was like, I want to get some blood tests done. And they did the bloods. Later on that evening, she rang at like 10 o'clock at night. This consultant rang us to say, need you to come in for an urgent scan tomorrow morning. The bloods are through the roof, basically, the kind of liver inflammation. And we went in that morning, had the scan, had to wait around because they were kind of slotting us into the end of clinic. Went in to see one of these oncologists, the one that wasn't one to mince her words, and basically said, this is not very good. The disease in the liver had went out of control, and she said, we're going to get you on this immunotherapy straight away, but with your level of disease, we don't have any research on if it's going to work or not. So that was the Friday, and that was actually our 10-year wedding anniversary that day. No, 11-year wedding anniversary that day. And maybe it was 12. Was it 12? It was 12 because it was 2024, yes. And we went straight in, and that was the Friday. By the Monday, he was in first thing in the morning, and he got this double dose of immunotherapy. And he had that, and he was very, very poorly after it. Ended up with a hospital stint not that long after. And then it came round to kind of deciding whether they were going to give him the next dose. So they do all the bloods and everything again. All the levels were off the scale again with the inflammation in the liver, and they didn't know, was that the immunotherapy causing it, because it can do that, or was it the cancer? So they made the decision to give him the second lot of it, and I think he lasted the weekend, and by the Monday he was in like septic shock. He got into hospital, he got really high dose antibiotics, steroids, and suddenly he perked up, and he was like probably the most well he'd felt in a long time because of all the drugs they pumped into him. Ended up with another scan that week, and by the Friday, the doctor came to us to say, there's nothing else that we can do. This is not the immunotherapy causing this, it's the cancer. And they gave him 6 to 8 weeks at that point, which took us right slap bang into Christmas. So, so that was, then he just went more and more downhill over that time. He rallied for a few weeks, the steroids helped, but the effect wore off. And then he actually lasted until the 15th of January in 2025. So we got Christmas, we got New Year, and we got past my birthday. That was another thing. There was these kind of big days that we didn't want him to go on. And then he kind of, the last week of his life, he wasn't really with us. He was unconscious, and then he just slipped away. His heart finally gave up, and he was at peace finally. So that was so really in the end, it was quite quick, because that was from June to January, and it was all over.
How did he face all of that going through it? Obviously, again, personal experience with Fiona, who was, try not to cry. She was the strongest individual through everything. I think she had a lot of her pain. Sorry. She had a lot of her pain from us, because I don't think she wanted us to feel that.
I think I would say exactly the same thing. Matthew never wavered, ever. I don't know how he did it. I don't know where the strength came from. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I don't think if that was me, in that position that I would have taken it quite so well.
Mm.
Um, the day that they told him that he had 6 to 8 weeks, so he was sitting on the hospital bed. I was sitting on a chair kind of at the end on the side, and he just looked at me and he smiled and he said, "You're going to be okay."
Mm.
And he was just brave. Do you know that?
Yeah.
He, I've never known anything like it. The strength of that man was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And all he wanted, and you know, he sorted out everything before he died. He changed everything into my name. Um, so there was nothing for me to do. Maybe the odd thing that he couldn't do while he was alive.
Mm.
Um, but he was just like, he was in that mode. He was like, no, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to see you right. Um, so he was so strong. And the way
Yeah.
he talked about it to people, you know, it was just like it was nothing.
Yeah.
Um, and even I think he hid the pain from me. I maybe seen a little bit of it more um, than some people, but he was never
Mm.
scared. He just didn't have fear of dying. It was,
Right.
you know, he did have faith, so that probably helped. Um, give him hope, but there was just what all he cared about until his dying day. He never put himself first. All he cared about was how we were going to be,
Mm.
and he wrote letters to us all. And you know, even just to do that, to sit down and write a letter to your
Mm.
children, how do you even begin to do that? You know, when they're 10 and 6. In fact, they weren't even that then, they were 9 and 5. Um, the strength was unwavering, and he was just an unbelievable person.
Mm.
And
Shows you
yeah,
the mark of the man to be able to put aside his own pain in many ways to
yeah,
try and make sure that you're right and the family's all right.
yeah,
Do you
it was
think that as you go through life now, obviously it hasn't been that long, do you think you take a lot of your strength from what he had displayed in terms of how strong he was throughout it?
I don't even know if I do. I hope that's where I found my strength because, well, I've realized that I'm stronger than I ever thought I could be.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's just it. When you're thrust into situations that you don't ever think that you're going to be in, somehow you find the strength to get through. And I think that that's what he did. He found the strength from somewhere to get through, to keep a brave face for his mum and dad and for us. And I suppose I've had to do the same thing because I still
Mm-hmm.
have 2 children to take care of. Um, there's plenty of times when I felt like I can't go on,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times. And my children have seen me emotional and cry and all the rest of it. But I just think the worst of situations seems to bring out sometimes the best in you. I know there's that saying, the worst of situation brings out the worst in people, but it seems for our family, the worst situation has brought out the best qualities of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we have learned so much about ourselves, and we will be stronger for it.
The other big thing that I found through Fiona's story was that I grieved her while she was still alive and didn't realize it.
Yeah, there's that, what is it called? Anticipatory grief.
Yeah.
I think that was actually worse
Mm-hmm.
than, not worse, it was different, I suppose, but
Yeah.
I think I did most of my grieving from probably that day in June when we got that um, 3 brain tumor news.
Mm-hmm.
My grieving started then because I knew that the life that we had planned was not going to go that way
Mm-hmm.
because there was no way he was going to live a long time from this illness because
Right.
people just don't when it
Mm-hmm.
gets to stage 4. So that anticipatory grief was awful. And
Mm-hmm.
that's probably what destroyed me more than anything. And I couldn't hide it from him.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to be strong, and I was. When I think back of all those appointments we went to, I don't know how I did it,
Mm-hmm.
and I probably was a lot stronger than I thought I was, but inside I was breaking.
Yeah. Yeah. I again, I totally, I, I sympathize with that because of what I went through with Fiona, and the only ever time where it kind of my character broke, it's so silly, was I came home from work one night and she was upstairs in bed, and I went up and said hello to her, give her a kiss, give her a hug. I said, because she said to me, sometimes I just want to be by myself. It's not that I'm pushing you away. It's just I just like to be by myself. And I was like, no, no problem at all. I said, do you want to be by yourself? He says, yeah. And I went downstairs and I was washing the dishes. I didn't think I was loud, but
Mm.
I come up to bed and she goes, you were angry, weren't you? And I was like, how do you know? She goes, because you were smashing the dishes. And I didn't even know. Didn't know I was doing it, and like that conversation sticks with me because there's me thinking I was very good at hiding it and, trying to be strong for her. And she was just so aware of what was going around her, basically.
I have a similar story actually, where so Matthew had symptom wise, apart from feeling sick, he never had any symptoms from the brain tumors. Never manifested in any way. Didn't have headaches. Didn't have seizures. Didn't have dizziness. Nothing. Um, which is why this again was such a shock. But it had got to Christmas Eve, and unfortunately, he had his first seizure on that day. Um, and he ended up going into the hospice for a few nights, just as a little period of recovery, because he wasn't quite needing it to be in it, you know, full stop. He
Mm.
was still not really mobile, but he was still able to walk around and things like that. And he got out of the hospice, and it was just that period in between Christmas and New Year, and we decided we would get to the beach for one last time. We would go to the beach, and he was, he wasn't a well man. He wasn't fit for anything really. He could barely walk to the car, and I was stressed trying to get everything together, getting buckets and spades for the children, things like that. And he tried to help me with something, and I completely lost it with him and screamed in his face to just go and sit in the car. I told you to sit in the car. And here was, I had held it together for so long, but, and he was only trying to help, but I knew he couldn't help. And I was probably just angry at everything because our Christmas had been taken away from us because he ended up in the hospice. And yeah, so you think you're keeping it together, but then you just lose it.
I guess the other element for me was in terms of that anticipatory grief. I didn't, or maybe I stopped myself, but I didn't realize just how sick Fiona actually was. It's weird. I've tried to explain this to friends. When a doctor says you've got uh, days to weeks to live, is what we were told the Friday before Fiona passed. She passed on the Monday. This was the Friday. The doctor said she's got days to weeks to live. I just remember his mouth moving
Mm,
and like his words were out of sync with what he was saying. It was such a
mm,
weird situation to be in. And I've told the story plenty of times where we were sitting on the day that she passed and we were in the family room because our friends were in seeing her. And every time I tell a story, it's a different friend that comes into the room to tell us because I just mix the whole thing up. But
yeah,
there's just that period of time where it just seems to be you don't know where you're at, what you're doing, you don't know who you are. Someone asks you your name, you wouldn't know.
yeah. I
And
find
part of
a lot of it's a blur.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
a part of that for me was not allowing myself to see how sick she was because friends would make comment to say her skin color had changed or she looked tired, and I can honestly say, and I think back now, I didn't see it. I didn't see what they're telling me that she looked like.
I I did I seen parts of it, but now when I look back at photos of Matthew in that time, I think, oh my goodness, he looked awful.
Yeah, you look back and you see the photos. That's right. Yeah.
I wonder if it was more to do with that there was a gradual decline for him.
Hmm.
So because it wasn't just he looked well one day and another day he looked really unwell.
Right.
I think it was maybe the gradual decline that I didn't realize how unwell he looked. Like
Hmm.
the color of his skin, he was really, really jaundiced. He was really gaunt, looked exhausted. Um, so I only see that now, looking back.
Hmm.
I don't think I really seen it at the time. I knew he was jaundiced because I could see his eyes were yellow, but no, he was much more unwell looking than he didn't even look like himself when I look at some of the pictures.
Right.
No, he just and his eyes were glazed over. He just wasn't
Hmm.
there.
I guess in your situation is obviously different to mine. We didn't have kids. You had kids in that scenario. So how was that trying to manage? Were they able to go in and see him or?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were. And so I was told once we went to there's this centre called the Maggie Centre. They're throughout the UK. They're not in Northern Ireland, I don't think, but they're like cancer support centres. And there was one in Leeds. So we went in there one day and kind of said, we've got this news. How do we talk to children of this age? And the piece of advice that she gave me at that time, and I kept it throughout the whole thing, was be honest with them. Use the word cancer, use the word dying, because children don't understand when you kind of put sprinkles and stuff on it. You know, they need the black and white of this is what's happened, this is what's going to happen. Um, so they knew whenever he was in the hospice that he was very unwell. But they would have come in, they would have climbed on the bed. Even after he passed away, the youngest came in and lay on top of him in the bed, and she thought nothing of that. And someday when she's grown up, I think that she'll be glad that she did that. And I would never have stopped that. You know, of course, they were going to see their daddy after he'd passed,
Mm.
because they weren't there at the time, which I think they'll might not be too happy with me later on. But not the problem, Matthew, Matthew was dying for a long time, and um, we thought it was going to happen, then it didn't. So I sent them back to school because we didn't think that it was as imminent then as it was, you
Mm.
know, that last day. So they were at school, so I had to, after he passed away, I had to drive back to school, pick them up, and bring them back.
Mm.
Not a fun journey. But yeah, they came in, and then the eldest, before she left, she was like, "Can I just go in and have a few minutes with them?" So she went into the room on her own as a 9-year-old. She nine? She was nine. Gosh. And went in. I don't know what she said to this day. I have never asked her. And she had her moment with her daddy. And at the hospice, they're very family orientated. Because we had chosen to go down that route rather than keep him at home. Because I didn't want my children to come back to the place where their daddy had died. Because Matthew would have preferred to stay at home, and that was one thing I asked of him,
Mm.
if we could just not do it here. Even for myself, you know, this was the home we had to live in, and I'm not sure how we would have managed if he had died here. So the hospice were great. They had lots of kids activities. So they made him these little hearts, and they was holding them when he died, and they went into the coffin with him. Um, I hope that someday all of that will help them and give them comfort that they
Mm.
were there and they were part of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that wouldn't have happened years ago, would it?
No,
So
no.
to have them be a part of that, I hope that they're grateful for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think they probably will do as they grow older because it's, as you
yeah,
say, it's from the point of protection as much as anything else, wasn't it? It's they knew they were part of it, and you know they were part of it. Matthew knew they were part of it, and I think that's a
yeah,
big that
yeah,
helps in many ways because it was almost without them agreeing to it, they will agree to it if that makes sense.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
um, and how does do you think that as they're growing now, are they asking more questions, or I'm sure Matthew's always talked about in the house.
Always, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously we've just had Father's Day, which is a difficult one. But I tried to approach it this year as let's not get upset about having to make cards in school. Let's still make the cards because you still have a daddy. He's just not here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they have their moments. You know, what people say about how grief comes in waves, it's very true for everybody, even children. One day they can be fine, one day they can just have a little breakdown out of nowhere, or it can be a massive breakdown out of nowhere. The eldest, particularly, she's at a difficult age, and you know, she doesn't understand why is she the only one in her class without a daddy, and it's hard to navigate all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But afterwards, you know, they do ask me questions about cancer because now if they hear the word cancer, if they hear that anybody's in hospital, they both have an association with oh, they're not going to come back, they're going to die.
Hmm.
So we have had lots of conversations around that and how some cancers you can't get better from and others you can. So I
Yeah.
try to educate them in that way. Um, but it's been a rough journey for them.
Yeah.
But they'll be strong from it too, hopefully. And their
Yeah.
daddy, I tell them all the time, their daddy would be so unbelievably proud of how far they've come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. And what about yourself then? How have you been throughout the
Mm.
last 18 months or so?
Um, so I think I walked around for the first 3 months probably in a state of numbness. I couldn't tell you much about that time.
Hmm.
I was functioning somehow. I think because I didn't have an option but to get my children up and dressed into school. I had to feed them. I had to keep the house clean. So I was functioning. And everybody kept saying, I hate this phrase. Oh, you're doing so well. I hate that. And they only mean well.
Right.
Um, but I used to get that all the time. Oh, you're doing so well. And it kind of hit that. And then I went back to work too soon because I felt like I have to do this. I have to provide for the children. I have to get back. And I was at work for 2 months and then everything sort of caved in a little bit. When we hit that 6 month mark, my world fell apart a little bit. I was probably, not probably, I was severely depressed,
Mm.
um, struggling to cope. And it took me kind of the whole of the summer to get past that. And I got back to work and kind of got myself picked up. And then we got to Christmas, and again, that was another time that I felt like I hit a wall.
Hmm.
And we had Christmas, we had the anniversary of his death, and then we kind of picked ourselves up again. And then recently, it's like something has just hit me out of the blue, and we were doing okay, and that overwhelm of everything just caves in a little bit again. And
Hmm.
lots of people say to you about how the second year is more difficult than the first, and I couldn't really understand why that was. But I think I'm starting to.
Hmm.
Um, and you're further away from that person too, aren't you?
Yeah.
Been such a long time. It's been a year and a half. Um, so it's been a lot. No, it's not been a long road because it's went so quick.
Yeah.
It's had ups and downs,
Yeah.
but we are here
Hmm.
and we are keeping going.
Yeah.
And it's not always smiles and rainbows, but I
That's it.
I don't have any option. I have to keep going.
Yeah. But I also think that there's a part of grief where there's a stereotype attached to it. And sometimes people think that you need to be on your knees and you need to be breaking every single day and you need to look terrible and have no sleep in order to be grieving. Um, I get exactly what you mean when you say, look how strong you are, or, look how far you've come, as people would say that, because
Say
I
I
often,
I could never do what you've done, and it's like,
right,
well, I didn't choose this.
right,
Like I know people mean well, but sometimes the things they say is, I could never do what you do in your position. Well, you would because you wouldn't have an option.
right,
And another
right.
thing was people commenting on my appearance. People were like, "Oh, you're looking so well." Like shocked. I think that they expect me to look haggard. Like through it all, I still have my hair fixed. I still put on makeup
Mm.
because that's who I am. Grief was not going to take that away from me. And I think, as you say, that stereotype, people
Mhm.
expect this vision, like Queen Victoria when she wore black for however many years,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's not that's not the sort of person I am.
I think as well, like a big part of my personality is I talk about anything in my life. There's not really much I hold back. I just talk of,
I'm like
I
that
just,
too.
you know, I think I just feel a little bit of, I don't know if it's comfort, but it's the way I was brought up. My mum is and my mum's family, they talk about everything. Nothing's hidden. There's no
Mm,
secrets. So I think I've taken that bit of personality on. So when this happened and we found ourselves in the same situation, the only thing that and I've thought about this plenty of times because people expect today's society, everything is on social media, Instagram, Facebook, your life is there. And there's an expectation that when we were going that through that with Fiona, that we didn't put anything on there. People expected it to be on there. People expected to know that Fiona was ill because I had so many comments, people saying, "Oh, we didn't know about it, or we
mm.
didn't hear about it." I'm like, well, there's a reason. You know, you don't have to put everything, you know, to put your full life on social media. Um,
No.
and I actually had people asking when I did start posting about her. I had people asking how she died. You know, there's just there's almost that at times. I don't want to say ignorance. Ignorance probably isn't the right word, or maybe it is. I'm not sure.
The naivety. I think it's sheer
Naivety.
naivety.
Yeah, that's probably the better one. Yeah,
I
that's
think
probably the better one.
people, thankfully, most people in life haven't experienced something huge.
Right.
And I think it comes from a place of pure naivety. And
Hmm.
I probably would have been the same
Hmm.
prior to having gone through this.
Right.
Um, so I don't blame people for what they say, but whenever you're in it, sometimes you do just want to tell people to shut up.
Yeah.
Or I wanted to say to them, you think I'm doing well? If you could see what's going on in my head,
Yeah. That's
you
it.
would see that I am not doing well.
Yeah.
What you show on the outside as well, when I'm dropping the kids off at school or going to an event or something, you're not seeing the home life.
Right.
So I think that's naive on their part to think that they can judge you from a snippet of your day and thinking
Hmm.
that you're doing well just because your children are fed and dressed
Right.
and still going to school.
Yeah, and you're still going to
Um,
work and you're still doing your life
yeah,
and etc.
doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing well on the inside,
Right.
but people assume that, don't they?
Yeah, that's true. It is true. And there's there's so many different aspects to it because obviously when you read about grief, you read about the seven steps or the
Seven
seven
stages,
processes or
yeah,
whatever it is, 7 stages. And to be fair, they're very obviously well researched, so there's some research behind them to some degree. But
yeah,
again, the perception is that you go from one to the next to the next to the next. You know, it's a stepping process, and obviously that's not quite the case.
yeah.
I found myself in work recently, and I was just typing away at the computer, and I just had a daydream of Fiona, and she was just in my head, and I don't know what we were doing. I just remember seeing her, and I
Mm,
must have been sitting at the computer still doing nothing for a good length of time because my work colleague sort of touched me on the shoulder, and I kind of jumped.
mm,
And she was, "You all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm grand. I just had a daydream about Fiona."
mm,
Like that's grief, but it's not the grief where you're on your knees crying. You know?
yeah. I had this morning, I was taking the kids down to their grandparents on the way to work. And as they got out of the car, the Garth Brooks song, come on, I've got friends in low places. And Matthew used to sing that, and he was able to go down low the way Garth Brooks could. And I literally could hear his voice singing
Hmm.
along with it. Um, and it's, and then you do have that feeling in the pit of your stomach of, oh, I miss them so much.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
how are they not here singing that anymore?
Right.
That is grief.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
definitely, I have not, for somebody that I was a very emotional person, I would have cried at the drop of a hat. TV adverts, I was gone.
Yeah.
And now I struggle to cry, and very few people have seen large displays of emotion from me
Hmm.
since everything that happened. Even at Matthew's funeral, I held it together reasonably well.
Right.
Um, I don't know why. That wasn't on purpose.
Hmm.
I don't know if it's some sort of defense mechanism or wall that I
Right.
put up. Um, but yeah, I can't have those big outpourings of emotion in front of
Right.
people. My body won't let me do that.
Right. Right.
But I am having all the grief still. It's not any less. And they talk about the ball, don't they?
Hmm.
About how but it's not a ball. Just about how your ball of grief
Uh,
gets stays the same, doesn't it?
yeah.
But you grow around it.
That's right.
But I'm not
Yeah.
sure how much I've really grown yet. I feel like I'm still like that ball is still quite large.
Right. And it's
Yeah.
more what I've noticed in myself in the last probably 12 months. And if Fiona's passed, it'll be 2.5 months or 2.5 years at the end of July.
Mm,
And it was 29th of January 2024. So I've noticed in the last 12 months in particular, like I'm doing a lot more things for me that I want to do. Like I'm less less a people pleaser than I used to be. And I think that's part of the process of evolving or growing or living through this is that it heightens your awareness obviously to how fragile life is, of course, but also to the point where, well, if you're here and the person you love dearly isn't here, then what can you, this is how I think anyway, what can I do to make the most of what I have here? And that's why the foundation exists. That's why the poetry exists. It's because that's my outlet. It's the way I find to. I, it's just so morbid, right? But I'm going to have the conversation. I spoke to a friend recently, and we were just chatting over a cup of coffee, and we were having a conversation just about life and about death and about what it means to be alive and the purpose, etc. Because you'd start talking about that or thinking about that quite
Yeah.
quite often, don't you? And I said that the only reason I'm living is to keep Fiona alive. And he took that as if I was going to jump off a cliff, as if I was
Oh,
going to do myself in. He thought that without having that purpose of keeping Fiona alive, I wouldn't be here. I was like, that's not what I'm trying to say to you. I'm trying to say, like, the purpose that I have in life now is to show everyone who she was and why she was a big part of my life and why I loved her so much. You know,
yep,
that was my drive and my kind of push.
yep.
Um, has grief kind of changed you in any kind of way, or have you noticed anything different in yourself? Or
I definitely don't have time for people who don't treat you right. You learn a lot about that, about people
yeah,
through grief, don't you?
yeah,
Um, who's there and who's not there. So I think I've probably lost some friends
hmm,
through it, but I've also gained some amazing friends.
right,
And life is too short. If you want to do something, go and do it.
mm,
Don't be unhappy in certain aspects of your life. If it's something that you can change, then change it. Book the holiday, take all the photos.
mhm.
All of these things. Like, um, I don't have time for people's petty moaning anymore. I think my tolerance for that has lessened somewhat because I just want to say to them, you have no idea.
Right,
Unfortunately, I do think a little bit of bitterness has come from it,
yeah,
and anger
hmm,
that why was it us that had to go through this? I
right,
know it's not just us, but um, and I don't want to become this bitter, twisted old woman. But there is, I think it's lessening, but there definitely
right,
was a little bit of bitterness
yeah.
that had come from it, unfortunately.
No, I
But
totally
me
get
and the
that.
kids have done loads of stuff, um, and have had loads of fun.
Mhm.
And Matthew's always there with us.
Yeah,
In our hearts, he's always there. He always will be. Nothing can ever take that away.